In the beginning, we were talking about the video that I made
Mhm.
that went viral.
About retrograde. You're talking about
Yeah,
retrograde. I think it's just something that a lot of people may not know exactly what it means, right? Because like I've heard people say, "Oh, well, stuff's not working. Like everything's like I'm having a weird day. Like my clothes are disheveled. Mercury's in retrograde, right?" And when they're describing that, maybe can you explain what it means astrologically for Mercury to be in retrograde, and then what it actually means from an astronomy perspective?
astrologically, what does it mean for Mercury to be in retrograde? Retrograde as a phenomenon that affects humans starts from humans recognizing that planets are moving back and forth in the sky. Period. You can develop Harry Potter's level of lore behind that, Hogwarts level, the Lord of the Rings level lore behind that idea, because you are trying to come up with a way to explain what's going on, right? It comes from you not being able to determine that that is happening because planets are orbiting a star.
Right. So, like, what does that mean then? Like, 'cause I think your explanation of that was really good with the graph
Mhm.
of retrograde. Like, what is
Oh,
actually
yeah.
happening?
Well, okay, yeah. So the planets orbit the sun at different distances and different speeds. So you end up some planets are moving faster than others. So planets end up passing each other. And when a planet passes another planet, or you think about Mercury being on the other going towards the other side of the sun, it's going to start to curve in its orbit. And from your perspective on Earth, it's going to look like Mercury was moving right, and then over the course of days, weeks, months, it curves and goes the other direction. It does like loops. These planets are going back and forth, retrograde, literally to backtrack.
Hmm.
So that's what you see in the sky. And if you see a composite image of what that looks like, it's actually pretty cool. And it makes sense to think that something interesting, something important is happening, but it's genuinely just a sign that nothing interesting at all is happening. Planets are consistently, they're moving at the exact same velocity around the sun. And as they pass one another, it appears from any given planet that the planets are moving left and right in the sky. Now, yeah.
So I guess maybe we can't blame things that are going wrong in our lives on the oscillation, the optical illusion of oscillation of Mercury in the night sky.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Like, what's the mechanism? I would ask this question is like, by what mechanism is you seeing the planet? I mean, it's more or less the same distance from you. The gravitational pull is the same. Is there a biological mechanism that we know of on your brain where if you change a negligible gravitational pull from a planet millions and millions of miles away, that it somehow change? Like, what's the mechanism? There's no known mechanism, right?
Right. Whereas we do know the mechanism in astronomy that is responsible for this optical illusion, right? And you described heliocentrism, but can you tell people kind of what that actually is and what it means?
Yeah. So we started out as humans with this geocentric view.
We're the
where
center of the universe.
We're in the center, which is kind of what it looks like, right? You look up, the sun comes up and goes down, the moon comes up and goes down. The planets move through the sky. They don't appear. They don't necessarily just go around. They do this little like retrograde thing, but it kind of seems like everything, even the stars, are orbiting around the sun. Think about like a huge fixed sphere of stuff out in space, just rotating around the Earth. I said the sun, I meant the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's geocentrism. And this makes sense. This was very important in the Catholic Church early on, right? People who came out and rejected geocentrism in favor of heliocentrism were known as heretics, right? This was speaking against God, who clearly made the entire universe to orbit and rotate around the Earth, which is the center of everything, because we're here. So you see how they come up with that perspective. But geocentrism cannot be explained by the observations that we make. What can is heliocentrism. Just put the sun at the center. And Copernicus was one of the first people that really started to popularize this, that in fact it's the sun. That's how you describe everything. And then Galileo comes along and he makes these observations of Jupiter and notices that there are these little white dots that are nearby Jupiter, and they seem to be orbiting Jupiter. So wait a second, Jupiter has these little worlds, these moons that are orbiting it. This proves that objects need not orbit the Earth. Jupiter, observations you can make. You can make it if you have a telescope yourself. If you have an iPhone, you can push up the exposure and take pictures of Jupiter and see the moons. You can do this yourself over the course of weeks and watch Jupiter's moons orbiting in the same way that Galileo did. And this proves that the Earth is not at the center. So that really like opens the door for the possibility that something else could be at the center, even the sun. He also made observations of Venus and noticed that Venus has phases, just like the moon has phases. Well, why does the moon have phases? Because it's orbiting the Earth and it's getting illuminated from different angles from our perspective. To us, it looks like phases. If you're on the moon, half of it's lit, half of it's dark. But if it's orbiting us, then we see different sides of it, and we see the exact same thing with Venus. It's like this is all irrefutable evidence that everything is orbiting the sun.
Right.
Not to bring flat earthers into this, but these are observations that were made with rudimentary pieces of glass hundreds and hundreds of years ago. There's no way to explain that other than a heliocentric solar system.
Right. And I think, just to make this practical for people, going full circle with the solar eclipse, right? The solar eclipse happens because the moon gets in front of the sun, and then we can see the sun's corona around the circle of the moon, and it blocks out the sunlight, right? And we can predict that accurately because of these observations that we've made.
Yeah, can predict it perfectly. For thousands of years, we know when all of the total solar eclipses are going to happen. We know when all the lunar eclipses are going to happen. It's these predictive models. They're like irrefutable.
Right. So speaking of predictive models, right? Astrology has predictive models of their own. But we were watching a video not too long ago with Neil deGrasse Tyson, where he described that the predictive models being like a month off based on the wobble of the Earth on its axis.
Right. So this is called the precession of the Earth. And, the Earth is spinning, but you sort of imagine a spinning top. And sometimes, although it's spinning, it'll like do these little wobbles back and forth before it ends up falling over. And the Earth is doing that. It's called the precession. So as it spins, it does this like 26,000 year precession. Now, if you think about what that looks like on the planet, that means that the sun is going to change, from a given location, the sun is going to change where it is on the sky over the course of that precession, which means that different constellations are going to end up being behind it. It's going to move through a different ecliptic plane. It's going to move through different constellations as this precession happens. And when most of the modern names and terminology for astrology now was constructed, the Earth, it was a couple thousand years ago. So the sun was in a different part of the sky, essentially, from year to year, which means that the signs that you think you're actually not, because everything has shifted slightly. And, to get back on that, timeline or back, I don't know exactly how to say it, to get back into that framework, you kind of need to wait about 26,000 years from 2,000 years ago. So like in 24,000 years, if we can, keep these astrology books pristine in this formulation, then people will be back on track, and they can use that. When you test an idea that just isn't valid, you're not going to get that positive confirmation.
Right. Yeah. I do agree that, again, as a scientific tool, astrology doesn't measure up. I think that's the conclusion here, right? But I think that, on a personal note, I think it's neither of our desire to shoot down people's beliefs or like make people feel, less than for believing something or applying something to their lives that doesn't have a scientific basis. Like, that's okay to do as long as you're not conflating it with science, in my mind, because I think that's when it gets dangerous.